My sister is severely autistic, and I hate her for turning my life into a living nightmare. I hate her. That should be wrong to say, but it doesn't feel like it. Ever since my sister was born, it's like I vanished from my parents' radar. I was 6, excited to be a big sister, but that excitement faded fast. The shift was gradual but undeniable. Suddenly, I was moving into the basement because she needed to be closer to Mom and Dad. That hurt. The basement was creepy and cold, and I missed the warmth of being near them. Nights down there were long and lonely. I'd hear the rest of the family upstairs and feel so cut off, like I was more of an afterthought than a daughter. Losing my toys to her was another blow. She didn't mean to break them, but it happened all the time. I remember trying to explain to my parents how it made me feel, hoping for a bit of sympathy, maybe even justice, but all I got was, "She's younger. She doesn't understand. You're the big sister, you should be more understanding." It felt so unfair. Those toys were my escape, and seeing them broken, without anyone caring enough to address it, just piled on the feeling of being invisible. The MacBook incident was the last straw. School had given it to me because I'd been doing really well, and then one day it was just destroyed. My school was mad at me for being careless, and my parents, they just added to the blame. No one stopped to consider it wasn't actually my fault. I was furious and hurt, but mostly, I felt alone in dealing with the mess. It wasn't just about a laptop, it was about feeling like nobody had my back. Honestly, trying to balance being a sister and having a life is rough. I love my sister, sure, but it's like my parents forget I'm still a kid too. Every time she needs something, I have to drop everything. It doesn't matter if I'm studying, hanging out, or even trying to catch a break. It's like I'm on call 24/7 without even signing up for it. I couldn't remember the last time I hung out with friends without constantly checking my phone, worried I'd miss a call from home, needing me to rush back. My life felt like it was on perpetual pause, always waiting for the next crisis or the next demand for help. The day I decided to go watch the new Spider-Man movie was a big deal for me. It had been ages since I'd made plans that felt purely for my own enjoyment. My friend Jake had been talking about it for weeks, and his excitement was contagious. I needed that break, a couple of hours where I could just be a teenager, not a caretaker. So, I made a decision. I figured, just this once, I'd turn my phone off to enjoy the movie, not worrying about anything else. Just 2 hours. You know, walking out of the theater. Turning my phone back on, I felt like I was hit by a truck. Missed calls and texts everywhere. I called home immediately, the joy from the movie evaporating with each ring. When my mom picked up, her anger cut through me. "Where have you been? We needed you an hour ago." I could barely get a word in. I rushed home, feeling guilty, but also kind of angry. When I got there, it was like walking into a storm. My parents were furious, their disappointment a tangible force in the room. "We rely on you, and you just decide to disappear to watch a movie." My dad's voice was sharp, his words punctuated by my sister's background noises, like going to a movie was some kind of crime. I tried explaining I just wanted a break, that I just wanted a couple of hours to myself, but it fell on deaf ears. "It doesn't matter. Your responsibilities here are more important than some movie," my mom added, her words final. They grounded me, said I was being irresponsible all over a movie. Sitting in my room afterward, it hit me. This wasn't about the movie. It was about feeling stuck. Yeah, I get it. My sister needs me. But sometimes I just want to do something normal without feeling guilty or getting into trouble for it. Being 18 and feeling like you're not allowed to have your own life is tough. It was about feeling trapped in a role I never chose, about longing for a piece of normalcy in a life that felt anything but normal. I loved my sister deeply, but in that moment, I couldn't help but feel robbed of the simple teenage experiences of friendships and carefree moments. Living in my house feels like I'm trapped in a loop, where everything revolves around my sister and her needs. Don't get me wrong. I get it. She needs a lot of care, and I want to be there for her. But sometimes it feels like I'm just another item on the family's to-do list. Help your sister. Make sure she's okay. Can't you see we're busy with her? It's exhausting feeling more like an extra hand. It's like I'm invisible unless they need something for her. This feeling of being a slave in my own home, it's suffocating. I carry this weight around, a burden that's made me question my own worth around the house more than an actual member of the family. Then there was this one week that felt like it could be different. I had been chosen to give a speech at a school event. Something about that recognition lit a spark in me. I worked hard on that speech, pouring my thoughts and feelings into every word. When my parents said they'd be there to watch me, for the first time in a long time, I felt valued. Finally, something about me. I worked on my speech every night, imagining looking into the crowd and seeing my parents there, maybe even catching them smiling proudly. The excitement was like a beacon, a rare light in the usual dimness of my daily life. Like maybe this time things would be different, but they weren't. They missed it because of something with my sister. Once again, they blamed it on my sister. Standing there about to start my speech and not seeing them crush me. I pushed through, voice shaky and hands trembling. I cried, not just for the speech, but for all the times I felt sidelined. Yeah, I made it through, and people clapped, but it felt empty. The whole walk home, I couldn't stop the tears. It's not like I wanted to make a big deal about them missing the speech, but it just hit hard. It felt like a reminder that no matter what happens with me, it'll always be secondary. Walking home, all I could think was how this pattern seems like it's never going to end. Talking about colleges with my dad was something I'd been looking forward to. It started off pretty normal. I was actually excited. You know. For once, it felt like we were focusing on my future, on something that was about me. I was getting into the idea, thinking maybe college was my chance to get out and do my own thing away from all the chaos at home. We were looking at some brochures, talking majors and campuses. It was the closest to dreaming I'd gotten in a long time. Then my dad made that joke. Something about picking a high-paying major so I'd be set to take care of my sister when they're gone. He laughed, thinking it was just a light-hearted comment, I guess, but it hit me hard. All my bottled-up feelings just exploded. I lost it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started crying, then yelling, telling him how unfair it was that my entire life was expected to revolve around being my sister's caretaker. It was all coming out, every bit of resentment, every moment of feeling overlooked and undervalued, trying to make him see how much I've had to give up, how everything always circles back to what my sister needs, but they didn't get it. My parents just stood there, staring at me like I was speaking another language, watching me lose it. No comfort, no apologies, nothing. Their faces were so cold, so detached. It was like they couldn't understand why I was so upset over a joke. That's when I realized they weren't going to hear me out. I ran to my room, slammed the door, and I've been here ever since. And here's the thing. I've been in there for hours, and they haven't even bothered to check on me. Not a knock. Not a word? Nothing. It's like my outburst didn't matter to them. It's so lonely sitting here knowing that even this, me being this upset, isn't enough to get them to see how much I'm hurting. It's like I'm trapped in this role they've set for me, and my feelings about it don't matter at all. Am I wrong for wanting more than this? For wanting to be seen as more than just a future caretaker for my sister? It just feels like no matter what I do, it's like my life doesn't matter. I am nothing to them. Nothing more than just an insurance for my sister after they are gone. After hours turned into a day and then another, with no word from my parents, something in me clicked. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had to change. It wasn't just about getting away for a bit. It was about needing some space to figure out my own stuff without always being pulled back into the same old situation. I thought of the one person who'd always seemed to get it, Grandpa. Without making a big plan, I just packed some essentials into a backpack one night and left. I texted him. I was coming over, half expecting him to talk me out of it or to call my parents. But he didn't. He just texted back, "Doors open." Staying with Grandpa has been eye-opening. It's not like every moment has been some deep heart-to-heart, but it's just calm here. He lets me be. We've talked about college, about what I might want to do, and it's the first time in a while I've been able to think about my future without feeling guilty or stressed. He's been supportive, encouraging me to think about what I want, not what I feel obligated to do. It's weird, but in just a week here, I've felt more like myself than I have in years. We've had meals together, watched some old movies, and he shared stories about when he was my age. It's been nice, simple, and kind of freeing. I've even started researching colleges again, this time looking at programs I'm actually interested in, not just ones that might make enough money to take care of my sister in the future. Being with Grandpa has given me a glimpse of what that might look like, and it's something I want to hold on to. Wow, thank you for all the support and love that you guys have given me. I never expected this post to reach the popularity it did. Thank you all. After thinking about it for these past few hours, you are right that I don't despise my sister. It's not her fault that she was born the way she is. My parents came to talk to me a while after my breakdown, but I was unable to bring myself to talk to them and only cried and asked them to leave. They have made arrangements with my grandfather for me to stay with him for the time being. My parents want to talk to me, but we have decided it's best I leave for now to have some space and time to collect myself. We will be sitting down and talking later this week about this issue. Thank you all again for the love and support through this. I started by telling my grandpa the story of why I broke down the way I did, and to be honest, when I finally spilled everything to Grandpa, his reaction was way more intense than I expected. I mean, I knew he'd be surprised, but he looked downright shocked, horrified. I told him all about how things have been at home, how I've basically been my sister's full-time caregiver on top of everything else, and how it all came crashing down that day with my dad's joke about college and taking care of her forever. Grandpa was seriously upset, especially when he found out that my sister was supposed to have professional help that she wasn't getting. He said a lot of stuff. He told me some things that I don't feel comfortable repeating here, but in essence, my sister is supposed to be getting care from a professional and that my parents were ignoring that. But the gist was that it wasn't right or safe for me to be in that position, especially with how things were with my sister. He couldn't believe my parents were putting all this on me and that they'd kept so much from the rest of the family. He was also really mad about the whole movie incident, saying it was the last straw that showed how unfairly I was being treated. Grandpa's pretty chill most of the time, so seeing him this mad was kind of a big deal. He told me straight up not to talk to my parents unless he was there, which was a relief, honestly. He said he'd talk to them first, sort everything out, and be there with me for any conversations in the future. But it wasn't just Grandpa. Over the next few days, I heard from aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. They were all checking in, making sure I was okay, and they were all just as shocked as Grandpa was. Turns out, my parents had been telling everyone they had a professional caregiver for my sister and even taking money from the family to pay for it. Except that caregiver never existed. Everyone was pretty upset about being lied to, especially about something so serious. This past week, man, it's been a roller coaster. Tough. Yeah, but also kind of eye-opening in a good way. The whole drama with my parents and finding out all that stuff I had no idea about was a lot to handle. But then there's been this unexpected silver lining. My extended family stepping up in ways I didn't even know I needed. Grandpa's been at the center of it all, trying to make up for what he keeps calling lost time. He's been really pushing me to just be a teenager again. It's weird, but nice, getting nudged to hang out with my friends more or chill and do whatever I feel like. Stuff I haven't really done in forever. It's like he's on this mission to help me reclaim parts of my life I didn't even realize I was missing out on. And it's not just him. My aunts and uncles have been amazing too. They've been around a lot this week, checking in, bringing over food, just talking and actually listening. It's like they're making this massive effort to show they care, to make sure I don't feel alone in this whole mess. It's pretty overwhelming, but in the best way possible. For the first time in what feels like ages, I'm not just the sister or the caretaker. I'm me, and that feels really good. The talk with my parents on Saturday night. Disaster doesn't even cover it. I went in hoping maybe, just maybe, we could start fixing things. Instead, it fell apart even more. They actually admitted to a bunch of stuff so messed up I can't even bring myself to type it out here. But the kicker, not a single sorry came out of their mouths. Instead, they doubled down, saying I was pretty much born to be my sister's caretaker. Yeah, my dad actually said that like my whole purpose was just about taking care of her, I couldn't keep it together. All the stuff I'd found out, all the support I'd been getting from the rest of the family, it all just bubbled up. I called them out on everything. The lies about the caretaker, the money they were supposedly spending on it, but actually weren't all of it. But they just dodged and made excuses. By the end of the talk, things were even worse than before. It felt like hitting a brick wall trying to get through to them. I'd gone into that conversation with a sliver of hope that we could mend things, but I walked out feeling like that chance was completely torched. So after that disaster talk with my parents, I made up my mind. I'm done. Had a long chat with Grandpa and my uncle last night, and we all agreed it's best if I don't go back. Today's the day I'm officially moving out to live with Grandpa. It feels weird, making this huge change, but it also feels right, like I finally have some control over my life again. I've also decided I'm leaving the state for college once I'm done with high school. Just the thought of starting fresh somewhere new is kind of thrilling. My aunt, she's been incredible through all this. She told me she's going to start sending the money directly to me, the money she used to give to my dad for my sister's care. Guess it's going to be my college fund now. My parents, they've called a couple of times since that night. But if you're thinking they called to say sorry, or that they miss me, nah, they just wanted to know when I was planning to come back home. It's like they're not even trying to understand why I had to leave. I know this is going to be a huge change, and honestly, I'm kind of scared, but at the same time, I feel this weight lifting off me. I'm finally making decisions for myself, and there's something really freeing about that. Today's just the start of something new, I guess. Deciding not to go back to my parents was tough. Not going to lie, there's this uneasy feeling sitting in my stomach, but deep down, I think it'll fade with time. The support I've been getting from the rest of my family has been unreal. It's weird. Even though I've made this big decision, feeling all their love and support makes the whole situation a bit easier to handle. But yeah, the harsh truth, I've pretty much lost my parents through all this. That realization hits hard. It's a lot to process, and sometimes I catch myself wishing things could have been different. But through all the mess, I've come to see something really important. I don't hate my sister. That anger I thought I felt towards her was misplaced. She's not the one to blame for how our parents chose to handle things. I love her more than I can say, and hating her for something she had no control over was wrong on so many levels. I hope someday I can make that right. For now, though, leaving is what I need to do for myself. It's about finding my own way, figuring out who I am outside of this whole situation. It's going to be a journey, but I'm ready for it. Edit. Thank you all so much. I wish I could respond to every single one of you, but my lunch only lasts so long. I'll update tonight how the move out went, but until then, thank you all. I want to say that your support has been amazing, and your kindness means more to me than anyone could ever imagine. Moving out was surreal. Grandpa and my uncle were with me every step of the way, helping me pack up my life into boxes and bags. Everything that meant something to me. We made sure to grab all the important stuff, like my birth certificate and social security card. It felt weirdly official, like I was collecting pieces of my old life to start a new one. My parents, They were pretty much silent the whole time. Dad took off with my sister not long after I got there, leaving just my mom to watch us pack. She didn't say much, just hovered in the background. It was awkward, tense even, but then, as we were about to leave, she finally broke down. She said she loved me, that she'd miss me. After days of silence, those words hit differently. I hugged her, said goodbye. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Sitting in my new room at Grandpa's house, I keep replaying that moment. Did she mean what she said? After everything, it's hard to know for sure, but I want to believe she did. Right now, all I can do is focus on what's ahead. Maybe, with time, my parents and I can find a way back to each other. My parents gave me some money and kicked me out after my sister was born. 17 years later, they want my help. I am 35 years old and employed as a software developer at a large West Coast tech company. I finally established a secure existence for myself after working in the field for almost 10 years, complete with a respectable salary, a cozy apartment, and even some future investments. I undoubtedly appear to be living the American dream from the outside. However, something that happened recently has been making me face my history, and I'm finding it difficult to deal with. After 17 years of total quiet, my parents, 60 million and 58 million, reached out to me and asked for my assistance with my sister, 13 million. You must be aware of our past in order to comprehend the significance of this. My parents never wanted me as a youngster. Before I was born, they had been trying for a daughter for years, and they were openly disappointed to have me instead. As a child, I frequently heard parents call me the spare or a remnant in conversations with friends or family. We weren't impoverished because my dad was a real estate agent and my mom taught high school, but they always pretended that my presence was depleting their finances. I can still clearly recall family get-togethers where family members would try to persuade my parents to be thankful for their healthy son. I learned to keep quiet during these conversations, but my parents would still say things like, "Unless it's a girl, we don't really have a child yet." My aunt would say things like, "At least he's smart and well-behaved." Or many couples can't have children at all. Their remarks still had a profound impact, especially during family gatherings or holidays. I began to develop a strong interest in computers and programming in middle school, using whatever resources I could find online. I would spend hours training myself to code in the school computer lab. After noticing my enthusiasm, my computer science teacher began to mentor me and even allowed me to stay after school to work on projects. However, my parents would either nod absently or shift the conversation to their ongoing efforts to have another child whenever I tried to discuss my accomplishments with them. When I was 15, everything changed. My sister was my parents' miracle child, finally born after years of trying. It was like a switch flipping in our home when she was born. There was love, excitement, and celebration all at once, but none of it was aimed at me. They gave her everything, including their time, money, love, and attention. Although I recognized that she was their top priority, the disparity in their treatment of us was unpleasant and striking. I can still clearly recall my junior year victory in a state-level programming competition. A minor college scholarship was part of the award. My parents were so enamored with my sister's block stacking that they hardly looked up when I brought the trophy and certificate home. However, her accomplishment of stacking 3 blocks on top of one another was worthy of a cake and photo celebration with the family. I pushed myself into my academics and coding at school because I knew that education was the key to my freedom. I began working as a freelance web developer on the side, keeping the money I made hidden because I thought I might need it in the future. That intuition was correct. In retrospect, I believe my parents had been preparing this for some time since. Rather than throwing a party for my 18th birthday, they sat me down for what they called an important discussion. They clarified that my sister's playroom and learning area required my room. They had already made the decision that I would go right away. They completely shut me down when I attempted to explain that I needed time to find a place and save money. They said I'd had time to get ready and should be able to handle things myself. My father gave me a $500 envelope containing what he referred to as startup money and gave me until the weekend to depart. It happened on a Tuesday. I stuffed my laptop, some clothes, and the about $3,000 I had surreptitiously collected from my freelancing business into my old high school backpack and a few trash bags as I packed. My sister, who was only 3 years old at the time, watched from the doorway, unable to comprehend what was going on. The initial years were harsh. While being cautious not to overstay my welcome anywhere, I couch surfed between friends' homes. I worked a variety of jobs, including day labor at construction sites, nighttime shifts at 7-Eleven, and freelance coding whenever I could find customers. In between employment, I would spend the day sleeping at public libraries, utilizing their computers to learn new programming languages and search for better prospects. I survived on whatever was on offer at the dollar store and ramen noodles. I sometimes went to bed hungry because I wasn't sure if I would have enough money for my next meal. The worst time of year was in the winter, when I occasionally had to decide between having enough food to eat and paying for a warm place to sleep. I made an effort to stay in touch with my parents during those formative years. In spite of everything, I would periodically give them a call in the hopes of seeing even the slightest indication that they were concerned about my welfare. However, they were obviously waiting for the conversation to end, and each exchange was brief and awkward. They never inquired about my needs or how I was doing. They just remarked, "That's nice," and shifted the conversation to my sister's preschool accomplishments. When I told them that I was enrolled in community college while working, I quit trying after being the only one who reached out for 2 years. Even after I taught myself full-stack coding, they never gave me a call to see how I was doing or left a message on my birthday or on holidays. I recall being so desperate to let them know that I had arrived, but their phone had already been cut off. I learned so much about survival and independence in those first several years. After being expelled, I continued to code while working several jobs. I would use my phone to study programming documentation during my breaks at the convenience shop. I would work on minor freelance assignments at the public library in between building site shifts with free Wi-Fi, air conditioning, and, most importantly, computers where I could practice coding. The library turned into my haven. When a small firm decided to hire me, a junior developer, I finally got my break. My freelance work portfolio and my contributions to open-source projects impressed them. Although the pay wasn't high by industry standards, it changed my life. I was able to buy a little studio apartment for the first time and was no longer concerned about where I would sleep every night. I pushed myself into the task, working 70-hour weeks and learning as much as I could about cloud computing, database administration, and system architecture. Like a sponge, I took it all in. After my co-workers saw how committed I was, I quickly took charge of modest initiatives. I kept working on open-source projects and creating my own apps on the weekends and at night. I had discovered something I genuinely liked doing, so it wasn't just about the money anymore. When one of the big IT corporations saw my contributions to their open-source platform, it was the true turning point. They extended an invitation for an interview, and following 6 rounds of technical interviews, I was offered a job that fundamentally altered my life. After 7 years, I am now in charge of a large project team as a senior software engineer. I have enough cash to feel secure about the future, a modern apartment in a safe building, and a solid investment portfolio. Before my father's number showed up on my phone 3 days ago, after 17 years of total silence, I believed I had finally put an end to my past. It was startling to hear his voice. His voice seemed older, almost frantic. "It couldn't wait," he added. "They had to discuss my sister." I was left reeling by the discourse that ensued. "It looks like my 13-year-old sister is having a lot of problems. She frequently skips school, has been caught shoplifting several times, and hangs out with a group of older teens whom my parents disapprove of. More concerningly, she has had multiple encounters with local police authorities, and drugs have been discovered covered in her room twice. 3 different rehabilitation programs have already been tried on her, but none of them appear to have been successful. When my father mentioned their financial predicament, it became evident why they had called. More than $200,000 has been spent on counseling sessions, various treatment programs, and legal bills. They had sold the majority of their valuables, maxed out many credit cards, and remortgaged their home. They are in dire need of assistance and are now considering a $775,000 specialist long-term treatment center. With tears in her eyes, my mother called and said they had nowhere else to go. The phrase family needs to stick together and the fact that I am their only chance to save my sister were repeated by her. I was struck by the irony of hearing these remarks from the same folks who expelled me when I was 18 and never looked back when I was sleeping in my car in between couch surfing arrangements. Where was this sense of family unity on all those evenings when I went to bed hungry? Where was it? In addition to aid with their credit card debt and mortgage payments, they are requesting support with the costs of the treatment program. They require over $100,000 in total. If I couldn't give the entire money right away, my father even recommended that we arrange a payment schedule. To be honest, if I wanted to, I could assist them. I have a secure financial situation thanks to years of frugal living and wise investing. However, I feel physically uncomfortable at the idea of granting them access to my finances. I acquired this money by working hard and making sacrifices for years, frequently going without food and housing while learning to code. I can't sleep at night because of how complicated this scenario is. Since my sister is only a child, I feel bad for even considering helping. She never requested to be born into this mess, and perhaps things would have turned out differently if someone had supported me when I was a teenager. However, I then recall how my parents handled me, how they dismissed me without question, and never once inquired about my whereabouts for 17 years. They contacted again yesterday, requesting a face-to-face meeting. They claim to want to make amends and provide an explanation for everything. They offered to drive the 4 hours to visit me and propose that we meet at a fancy restaurant in my neighborhood. Their zeal unnerves me in some way, as if they're making an excessive effort to sway events to their advantage. According to my partner 3-4F, I should set clear limits. She has personally witnessed the amount of effort I have put into rebuilding my life and getting over my childhood trauma. She fears that allowing my parents to return could reverse years of emotional growth. Although he thinks I owe my parents nothing, my best buddy, who let me sleep on his sofa during those difficult early years, advises me to think about assisting my sister directly if I so choose. I'm totally conflicted right now. My rational side tells me to keep the distance that has helped me succeed. My parents still view me as a resource to be utilized rather than a beloved son. Thus, they haven't changed. Their true motivations are evident from the way they are handling this matter, concentrating on the money rather than trying to make atonement for the past. However, my emotional side keeps thinking about my sister, a disturbed adolescent who may be misbehaving due to the same poisonous familial dynamics from which I fled. By refusing to assist, am I sustaining the abandoning cycle, or would aiding merely make my parents' manipulation possible? Those terrifying evenings spent sleeping in my car taught me to never take for granted the life I've worked so hard to create. I feel like I'm being pulled back into the craziness that I've been trying to avoid for years. Should I assist them and run the danger of being manipulated again? Do I make an effort to assist my sister directly, or should I continue to set the boundaries that have helped me recover and grow? I'm sure I'll question any decision I choose. I might be angry with them for dragging me back, and if I assist, I could always question whether I could have changed my sister's life if I didn't. This decision is weighing me down, and I could really use some outside insight. First update, I chose to meet my folks at a downtown coffee shop. After reading your advice and comments, I reasoned that being in a public setting would help maintain decorum and provide me with a convenient way to leave if necessary. I was immediately struck by how much they had aged. When I first saw them enter, in addition to having black circles under their eyes and a lot more gray hair than I could recall, they were worn out. They didn't take long to delve into specifics. It seems that my sister's problems are more serious than they first said over the phone. She has had to attend several rehabilitation programs, all of which they have had to pay for out of pocket. In addition to her substance abuse and legal issues, she hasn't gone to a full week of classes in months, so she's not just missing school periodically. She frequently slips out with individuals who are obviously a bad influence, frequently going missing for days at a time. My parents weren't lying to me about their financial circumstances. They showed me their phone records to pay for these costs. They have sold the majority of their prized assets, including the house I grew up in. They are currently having financial difficulties and live in a tiny apartment. According to their estimates, they will only be able to survive for a few more months if they sell some family artifacts. I felt uneasy because of this underlying expectation that pervaded our talk. My duty as their son to assist them was one of the family obligations they constantly brought up. They seemed to assume that just because we are related, I would step up regardless of what they had done in the past. It was evident from the way they spoke that they hadn't really acknowledged their previous treatment or truly digested how they had wronged me. I could feel all of my previous hatred and rage rising as they continued. None of this was their fault, in their opinion. They dismissed my expulsion at the age of 18, claiming it was just parenting and that they had acted in the best interests of the family at the time. They behaved as though their treatment of me was entirely appropriate. They now expected me to overlook everything and intervene to solve their issues. I came to see that they were seeking a solution, not understanding or forgiveness, and my money was that solution to them. I was their final option because they needed someone to shoulder the financial load of all the choices they had made over the years. I listened to what they had to say before firmly telling them that I was unable to assist them. I clarified that, when they abandoned me, I had put a lot of effort into starting a life on my own and that I was no longer in a position to help them, either morally or emotionally. I was clear that I didn't feel obligated to get them out of a situation that they had established for themselves. My refusal was not well received by them at all. Their tone altered entirely, and their expressions hardened. They accused me of being callous for not assisting my sister, branded me selfish, and claimed that I was leaving my family. Their eyes were filled with disappointment and rage, which I could see. It reminded me of my early years. Nothing had changed. They continued attempting to use guilt to make me feel as though I owed them money. I was more conflicted as I left that meeting than when I arrived. I feel somewhat relieved that I defended myself and established boundaries. However, another part of me feels bad, as if I'm abandoning them when they're at their lowest. It's difficult to describe, but it seems weird to leave them in this way, even if I know they profoundly wounded me. I can't stop thinking about my sister, whom I don't even know, and their predicament. Although I'm sorry for her, I don't think I can help her. It hurts to know that, even after all these years, my parents still only regard me as a tool to solve their problems rather than as a unique person with a life and challenges of my own. It's difficult for me to let go of the guilt. Is it wrong of me to persist with my choice? Should I have looked for a compromise? I can't stop reliving the encounter in my head, questioning whether I made the proper decision. Second update. Since my last post, which was only a week ago, things have gotten even more bizarre. Only a few hours earlier, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I heard my sister's voice for the first time. When I responded, I was completely unprepared for this. I only have hazy memories of her from when she was a newborn, just before I moved out. The call got off to an unexpectedly good start. Considering what I had heard about her behavior, I was surprised to hear a courteous, almost pleasant voice. She started by requesting that I assist our parents with their present financial predicament. It was evident that she had practiced this pitch because she was making a big deal out of how they were having trouble and how I could save the family. I made an effort to respond politely, but firmly, stating that I had to make the best choices for myself because of the complexity of my connection with our parents. Everything changed at that point. Her attitude changed abruptly. In a matter of seconds, she switched from being courteous to becoming enraged, accusing me of being self-centered and leaving her to handle our parents' problems. She had always been envious of me and insisted that I was abandoning my family. She said I was being arrogant since I had left and begun living on my own, whereas they had been my backers the entire time. I was stunned by what she said. They had a hauntingly familiar sound, as if she were repeating something she had heard countless times. She talked about my assistance with such arrogance, as though she really thought I had a duty to intervene and make everything right. I was so shocked that I was unable to react. I was being forced to make up for years of decisions I had nothing to do with by this person I had never dated. She hung up before I had a chance to comprehend her emotional outburst. I tried to make sense of everything as I sat there looking at my phone. What was the source of this animosity? Why did she believe I had left her? I required clarification. I was determined to find out what was happening. So I called my folks. I immediately questioned them whether they had been telling my sister that I had left them and her behind. When they first picked up the phone, after a revealing silence, they eventually came clean. They had been giving my sister an entirely distorted explanation for my departure for years. They informed her that they had severed their relationship with her out of spite and that I couldn't bear to share their attention with a younger sibling. I was portrayed as a conceited older brother who left the family because I was envious of her. They had completely removed from their story the fact that they had made me feel alienated from the day she was born and expelled me as soon as I became 18. It was as if someone had taken my breath away. My sister has grown up thinking that I was the bad guy in this tale. Given that she had been fed misinformation about who I was and why I left, it's no wonder she felt as though I had abandoned her. She had been carefully kept in the dark about the fact that my parents had made me feel unwelcome from birth and had evicted me from the house. That realization caused me to hang up on them. Although it has just been a few hours since our previous talk, they haven't made another attempt to get in touch. I'm upset with my parents for misrepresenting me to my sister and giving her the impression that I abandoned her. But I'm also upset with my sister for snapping at me and demanding my assistance, though I owed it to her. It's difficult to get rid of this resentment, but I'm also experiencing a new form of guilt. I wish my parents had been honest with her about my reasons for leaving. Perhaps my relationship with my sister would have been different if they had. Although I might not have been able to provide financial support to my parents, I could have developed a relationship with my sister and perhaps helped her steer clear of some of these behavioral problems. Now, though, it seems impossible to repair the harm, even whether I want to try, as that is up in the air. My family returned in the worst conceivable way, just when I thought I was done with them forever, which makes the whole scenario tiring. It's not that easy for me, even if a lot of commenters have advised me to simply ban my parents and move on. Whatever you want to call me, this is still family, and I believe that I should at least be aware of what's happening. Even though I'm in no position to provide financial support for my family, I can't help but notice that this is the first time they've contacted me. Nevertheless, I can see that my sister is too engrossed in their version of events to see things any other way, and my parents are still attempting to control the situation to achieve their goals. I'm at a loss on what to do. I can't get rid of the sense that any decision I make will be the wrong one. I'm even more convinced that keeping my distance is the proper decision, the way they've misrepresented the reasons for my departure. I feel bad for my sister, though. Her conduct and relationships are obviously being impacted by the skewed perspective of her family history that she was raised with. I wonder if this damage can be fixed or if it's best to leave it alone. Third update. Since my last update, which was a few months ago, I've had plenty of time to think things through and let things calm down. It's been quieter for me, to be honest, but only because I choose to avoid the mess my sister and parents had produced. I'm coming to realize that sometimes taking a step back and avoiding letting their drama take over my life is the greatest way to achieve serenity. My parents gave me another call about a month after I had last provided an update. I wanted to hear what they had to say, so even though I was dreading it, I picked up. They were even more desperate this time, and they accused me of being dishonest in order to get money from me. They described the dreadful situation, how they were in danger of losing everything, and how they wanted me to intervene and make things right. The guilt trip about family is supposed to stick together was their first attempt. When that failed, they resorted to threats, claiming that if I didn't assist them, they would ruin my life. They then claimed that I was their only hope, changing their strategy once more. To be honest, I felt disgusted. They continued to threaten me in spite of everything that had transpired, and they never once stopped to admit how poorly they had treated me. I refused to back down and reiterated that I was unable to provide them with financial support and that I was not responsible for solving their issues. I reminded them that I wasn't responsible for cleaning up the mess they had made. These decisions, of course, did not make them pleased. For the next month, they continued to phone, alternating between threats and guilt trips. They eventually stopped phoning. I assumed they had finally come to the conclusion that I would not give in. I didn't hear back from them for a month, and to be honest, I thought that might be it. However, I received another call around a week ago. I nearly didn't answer, but my curiosity won out. Things had only deteriorated. They informed me that they needed to file for bankruptcy. They were essentially starting over with nothing after selling nearly all they owned to pay off their debts. They then revealed an even more shocking detail. My sister had moved in with one of her friends and had severed all ties with them, even though she is just 13. She managed to move in with a friend's family, who my parents claim tolerates her misbehavior. They said it was best that my sister left them because they could no longer see themselves supporting her. When I questioned why they didn't call the police, in a sense, they have also abandoned their second child. They initially attempted to place the blame on me. They claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had simply assisted them when they requested it. They said that everything went south because of me. Naturally, they were unable to acknowledge their own responsibility for their acts. I was furious. I bluntly told them that their actions and how they had treated me were to blame for everything that was happening to them. I brought up the topics of how they treated me like a second-class person in my own house, how they neglected me when I needed them, and how they expelled me when I reached 18. I informed them that they continued to try to place the responsibility on me while ignoring the fact that that had an impact on me. At that point, they began to retreat and eventually cease making excuses. They expressed regret for everything they had done to me and offered an apology. They expressed to me their wish that they had acted differently. They seemed to be saying everything that needed to be said, but it was too late. In addition to the fact that they had ruined my sister's and my own lives, I couldn't simply ignore how they had treated me for years. They were now suffering the repercussions of their decision to push me away. I must admit that I felt sorry for them, but I also realized that I couldn't risk the life I had created for myself in an attempt to mend what was already damaged. I informed them that I needed to keep my distance and that I was unable to assist. Despite their displeasure, I stood by my choice. I was still upset with them for what they had done to me. After I hung up, however, I felt sorry for them at the same time. It's too late now, but I wish they had taken the time to realize what they were doing incorrectly when they had the chance. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't save them, and I'm learning to accept that. I have no idea what the future holds for my sister or them. I just know that I won't let their errors disturb my tranquility. They can't drag me back into their mess. I've come too far. I have much more important things to worry about right now. But maybe in the future, I'll try to get in touch with my sister once more to see if I can assist her in getting back on track. All I can do is hope she takes this lesson to heart and makes wiser decisions than our parents did. That's about it for me. then I won't be checking in on my family for a very long time. Even though I'm aware that this isn't the best conclusion, I've come to terms with it. I sincerely appreciate all of your guidance and encouragement over this trip. It has enabled me to remain steadfast in my choices. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.